Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. We've got exciting news today. We're starting a new project, and that is always one of the happiest days, I think, in the studio because we get to do something new. It's exciting. It's just like spring. And since we're really in the spring of the year, it's a great time to do it. Now, some of the things we've covered on the channel already include EPP quilt tops. We've talked a little bit about supplies through all of our videos. One thing we haven't talked a whole lot about is applique. And this is going to be an applique project. And just quickly, I want to tell you that applique is taking one piece of fabric in a design and sewing it on top of usually another piece of fabric, and you're creating a pattern or design on that. Some of the prettiest quilts sometimes are applique because you can get in really great detail the designs that you're using. It's great for arcs and curves and circles because you're able to cut the fabric in that design and you're not relying on straight seams to create it. So let's move forward and introduce our project. Now let me tell you a little bit about what excites me about applique, and particularly this design that we're doing. It's called Miss Kelly, and it's part of a quilt design called My Tweets. And I ran across this somewhere. I don't recall if it was on Pinterest or maybe I was looking for something else and I came across it. But what intrigued me was the Dutch influence on this particular pattern. It looked a lot like Dutch paintings and Dutch folk design. It also was very bright, happy, vivid colors, and that intrigued me as well. For some reason, I think I'm drawn to that. So those were the two things that kind of pulled me into this project, and now let's show you what it looks like. This is the printed pattern, and you can see it there, I hope. We'll try to put in a link with a little bit bigger illustration of what this looks like. This is actually a picture of the designer's quilt or the designer's pattern. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Her name, and let me get this, is Erin Russek, and she has a website. It's www.Erin Russek, that's ErinRussek.typepad.com. I found that I could go to her website. There was a link there to purchase it through Etsy. And this particular quilt, it has this design as the center motif without the little sawtooth border. And then she has, I think it's 8 smaller motifs that go around it if you were choosing to do the whole quilt. I think for me, I'm just going to focus on the biggest block, the center block, the Miss Kelly. And that will allow me to challenge myself to do the applique and to use all of these beautiful fabrics that I've chosen. I think that time-wise, that is about the amount of time that I have available right now. And it could be that once I finish this center piece, I move on and do the other ones. But I'm going to start here and see where it goes. This is, I would say, by far the most challenging applique that I've done. I've certainly done other appliques that were volume-wise more applique, but they were a couple of different shapes that were just repeated over and over again. And this particular design is a lot of different shapes and a lot of different colors, and they're all combined together, overlapping and sitting next to each other and so forth. So let's talk about what she is saying the fabric requirements are. The finished design of this centerpiece, as it is shown here, with the purple border is 35 by 35. So it's a rather large, that's going to be about that big square. It's a rather large single applique block for a quilt. For the background, it's stated that it needs a 26 by 26 square of background fabric, various fat quarters for applique and shapes. The sawtooth border requires a 1/4 yard of purple and a 1/4 yard of the background fabric. The vase itself is 1 fat quarter, and the outer border is 3/4 of a yard. The binding for this, she's recommending 3/8 of a yard, and that is a lot. I will not be putting down her fabric requirements on what I attach and the links down below the video. I am going to give you the links for the fabric that I chose, and I will tell you how much fabric I bought. I don't want to step into her arena for her pattern, because it is important when someone designs a quilt pattern that you purchase it from them. But I'm going to give you enough information based on how I am going to do this that you should be able to follow along if you like, and I would, however, recommend buying her pattern if you are going to do a sew along with me. Now, here's the way I'm going to proceed with the videos. We have a video today that is introducing the pattern. I'm going to show you the fabrics that I chose, tell you a little bit about those. I'm going to link the actual barcodes or product codes from Joann's. All these right here came from Joann's in the comments below. So if you want to pick the exact same fabrics, if they're still available, you can get them. And I purchased these in April of 2023. So you'll have a reference there of how far out you're watching this video, because they stay out there and you could be picking this up a year or two later, and obviously the fabrics may not be available. In addition to the fabric that I talked about, she does recommend basic sewing supplies, a rotary cutter and mat, which we all should have, thread to match the applique fabrics. I'm going to be using mostly grays, either a light gray or a dark gray. In some instances that may not be appropriate. It may show too much, and if that's the case, I'm going to my stash of embroidery floss to applique these pieces on, because I have a huge variety of that on hand. And if for some reason I run into a color that I don't match, I don't have something that's going to blend well enough, then I may go out and purchase something that coordinates with that. This is going to be a starch, how would you call that? We're going to use liquid starch when we fold over the pieces for the applique. It's a variation of needle turn applique. So you will need liquid starch, and I found the Stay Flow product at Walmart. They did not have it in my local grocery store, which I was a little surprised, but I did find it at Walmart, and you can order it online as well. She's also recommending fabric glue. I don't have any of that right now. I think she's using it in a basting capacity, and I'm not sure if I'm going to use that or not. I think I'm going to try without it. If I find I need it, I'll use it. And then she's recommending bias bars. I ordered the bias bars on Amazon. However, they've not come in yet. I don't know if they're back ordered or if they're just having an issue getting them to me, but they're ordered. If they don't come in, I will use my bias tape maker to make a appropriate piece of bias. And what we'll be using that for is there is a vine in the bottom parts of the design, and there's a bias strip that comes down from the top to the middle in the design. The last thing she's recommending is heat resistant template plastic. I'm going to try this and see if it works. My observations of this pattern is it's almost, but not quite, symmetrical. And I'm going to show you right now. Well, I'm going to wait just a second. In the pattern that you purchased from her is 6 pages. You get the cover sheet with the picture of the design and the fabrics that you need. You get a page of directions. You get a picture of the actual pattern. And I'm going through these quickly because I want you to kind of see what they are. But again, I don't want to have any reason why you don't go by her pattern. Just trying to be considerate in that aspect. She gives you some general instructions for applique and also instructions for that sawtooth binder. I think in reading through these quickly, they were pretty much what I understood applique to be, and the only difference that with what's going on here versus what I've done in the past with applique is that she does use the starch method. That's something I'm not familiar with. The method that I used before with applique was just being able to baste around the design and pull it tight and sew baste it and stitch baste it in place. And then there is another pattern in here that is used to enlarge to get your working pattern, because this is going to be the whole design is 35 by 35. This piece is about 26 by 26. So obviously you can't work off this. So I had 2 choices when it came to the pattern. I took the pattern over to my local copy shop, and she does give you a sheet that gives her permission to enlarge a copy for your use. And they could enlarge it to 300%. And the man at the counter told me it would be $8 to $10 to do that. And while I don't find that that's totally unreasonable, it wasn't something that right then I was willing or able to do. So I came back home, opened up the PDF on my computer, and I was able to create the pattern the size I needed by printing it at 300%. Now it's not on one sheet of paper, it's on multiple sheets of paper, kind of like this. And I used a light box to trim it up and put it together and tape it so it's a single piece of paper. And let me show you what that looks like. It's like a grand unveiling. So here's your pattern. Now, I talked about a light box, and you might not have a light box, and that's good, we're fine. All you need to do is use a window on a sunny day or a bright day, and you start in one corner or another, and you tape it lightly to your window, and then you take the next page and trim it up, and you're going to find where that matches, and that's going to be like right here. So you just trim it up and you tape it in place. It's easy. It's not complicated. You just need to take your time, match up more than one line, make sure it's right, and then tape it in place. I'm going to be able to work with this throughout the whole pattern. And we will take that in probably one of our first videos about this and how we're going to work off this. This is exactly the same way that when I did my cherry rose quilt, I took the pattern out of the book and recreated it on a piece of poster board. And from that poster board, I was able to mark every square so that every square was identical to the other one. We're only making one, so we're not going to transfer it to poster board. We're just going to use this to be able to mark our background fabric where we want our pieces to go. I'm not going to mark it all at one time because most of these markers are either the disappearing ink or they're water-based. So if you mark the whole thing, probably by the time you got from one side to the other, this marking would be gone. So we're going to mark section by section what we're working on. Okay, let's get to the fabric, because to me that's the most beautiful part of this whole thing. It took me probably an hour in Joann's to pick out this fabric because I was looking for colors that were similar to what she used in her design. I'm not sure if you can see that with this fabric or not. And there are quite a few. So I'm going to go through them real quick. I'm just going to give you the brand and the name. And like I said, the product numbers will be down below. And we're just going to run through these really quickly. I'm going to use a plain white So Classic pattern. Let me get that right. A plain white So Classic fabric for the background. And I have everything here except the fabric for the vase. And I'm going to go shopping later in my stash to see if I have something for the vase. And if I don't, I'll have to go again. Or I may choose to go with a solid fabric for the vase. Just because I didn't find anything when I was at the store before and I wanted to keep moving with this project. We can start without that if we need to. So from the darkest and probably the most visible part of this quilt, this is a Keepsake Classic fabric, and all these are 100% cotton, just so we're clear. This is called Purple Tonal. It's a very dark royal purple. And then the next purple is also a Keepsake, and it is called Sun Drenched Flowers Lavender. And it has little flowers and butterflies in this kind of mottled purple fabric. The next one I thought was a teal color, but they are calling it Aqua Tonal. It's also a Keepsake, I'm sorry, I said it's Keepsake Calico is the brand name. Aqua Tonal. Then we have an orange. This is So Classic. They did not have one in the Keepsake. This is called Solid Orange. Next, for my medium orange, I had to go with a fat quarter. And this is called Yellow Assorted FQ8. And I think I have 2 of those. I thought I had 2. Maybe I just have 1. Then for my yellow, the yellow, oops, we got a little, let's do that right now so we don't make that mistake again. For the yellow, this is a Keepsake. This is called Fancy Butterfly Yellow. Then in the greens, for my darkest green, I went with a fat quarter. This is Green Assorted Fat Quarter 14, and it's kind of a medium green with some white plus marks. For my next green, this is also a fat quarter. It's called White Scroll on Green FQ, and it's just a little swirly design. And for the last green, it's a Keepsake Calico Pin Dots on Sage. And then into the pinks. The darkest pink is a Keepsake Calico Pink. My dark medium pink is a Keepsake Essentials Swirl Pink. And this has little swirls that come out looking like hearts in a little darker pink. And from a distance, you can just barely tell it. For my lighter medium pink, it's a Keepsake. It's called Gravel Pink. It's got some little speckles of some dark and some mottled medium pink and dark pink, medium pink and light pink in there. And then finally, it's what I'm calling kind of my baby pink here. This is a So Classic, and it's called So Classic Solid Light Pink. So those are our fabrics. Like I said, we don't have the fabric here for the vase on this pattern. I'm hoping I have something in my stash that will work. If not, we'll go back shopping for that. Let's see, what have we talked about? We've talked about fabric. We've talked a little bit about supplies. We've talked a little bit about what we're going to do about thread, The background fabric we've covered. I've not decided whether I'm going to do the sawtooth border or not. I think it's just going to depend on how quickly this goes and how well it goes. But this is really just to me, a gorgeous design. It is so pretty. It is cheerful and bright and just elicits happy emotions. And when you're going into spring, like I said, I think that's a project that can really lift your spirits. This would also be a great project for the middle of winter. If things are dreary where you are and you need something happy and light to work on, it might be a great project. But as I stated before, usually I piece and hand sew in the spring and summer months, sometimes into the fall. But usually winter is when I hand quilt. Because I like that feeling of being under the quilt. So summertime is a great time for me to work on things in my studio with my machine, my hand stitching. Applique is not quite as portable as EPP, but most of the time you're working on, you're cutting that design, you're getting your pieces together, and then you're sewing on one smaller piece at a time for these. You can see that some of the bigger pieces are smaller than the size of your hand. Most of them are, like this is probably the size of a quarter, if that gives you a little bit of confirmation about how big it is and how much fabric it's going to be and what it's going to look like and what you're going to be dealing with sewing on. So you could be sewing on something the size of a quarter or something a little bit bigger here when you're talking about this vase, or tiny little pieces. This is smaller than a dime. So a great variety in sizes. I think I mentioned earlier that in looking at her design, to me it looks like it's close but not quite symmetrical. So some of these pieces, I may, how to say this, I'm probably not going to cut an applique piece for every one of these. If I cut, for example, a leaf, and it is substantially the same as a leaf, I'm going to use the same piece. I may have to flip it over. And I think that these two are probably the same anyway, but even in these, this F7R and F7, I think even if they're not exactly the same, I'm probably going to use that same piece of Mylar. It'll save me time and it will be close enough to the design that it will essentially look like it. So I think that will save me some time and effort in getting this wrapped up and moving on quickly. And then of course this and this are the areas where we're going to be using the bias strips. So not too much in this particular pattern piece that we're going to need to work with on the bias strips. So I think that that's all that I have for you as far as the pattern goes. I will not, this series of videos will come out on Fridays. So we will not have, this is coming out on Monday. We will not have a video this Friday. I'm going to wait and start the videos the following Friday. That's 2 weeks to allow for shopping if you want to sew along with us and at least get some of your basics together so you can begin on this. And the first thing we're going to do when we start is I think we're going to start probably with the flower up top. Those are big pieces. They're going to come, I think we're going to be able to use one set of pieces for one side for the other side. So I think that'll be very quickly. We'll be going through different fabrics, but it looks like all of those pieces on that top section are very similar in their shape and size. So I think that our process in doing them will be the same. So if I could recommend, if you're going to purchase fabrics, that you start with the pinks, because that's where I'll be starting in the first video. And you'll need your background fabric, of course. The first video will be trimming up the background fabric, making some rudimentary marks with our disappearing marker or our water-soluble marker. Most likely we'll put some registration marks on our fabric. We'll start with cutting the template pieces. I'll cover that, and we'll start with that pink flower up top. So that does it for today. We'll see you back in almost 2 weeks with our first video, and we'll get started on this really happy pattern. I'm very excited. I hope you are excited too. If you want to continue and see the videos in this series, please subscribe to our channel and make sure you click the button so you're notified, or the bell so you're notified of our videos, and we'll get through this and create a beautiful pattern. Thanks so much. I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I said, be sure to like us and be sure to subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi, Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio. We just finished up our video on the My Tweet Miss Kelly, and I wanted to bring one other thing to your attention. On this particular design, because we have so many very bright and vivid colors, some of them dark, some of them super light, one thing I am going to do for this is pre-wash my fabrics. So before we get to the point of starting our first video, I will be pre-washing these. They are cut pieces, and I got 1/3 of a yard of each color. So I will be pre-washing these and allowing them to dry so that we're ready for our first video. I wanted to make sure you knew that, so if you're sewing along, you can do that too. Thanks so much. See you next time.